You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll receive episodes early, gain access to our Discord server, and get yourself an Indieheads podcast sticker. All of our upcoming episodes we put on our Patreon 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this through our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, including Becca Etienne, Georgia Bukowski, James Boss, Marcy Anime, Delaney Mothman, Josiah Duncan, Jenna, Matt Cameron, A History of Violet, Joseph Duranti, Connie, Javon Clement, Jimmy Allward, Three Twist Balloon Dog, Charles, Nicole Rifkin, Tim's Discount Prices, Heath and Catherine, Jay, Rena, Ian, Matthew Taylor, I Like Books, Sarah Moore, Griff, Max Kapazinski, Mark Barry, Cal50, Dr. Penis Hoagie PhD, yeah, Chris Wade, Midwest Maxwell, Jake Wald, Grant, Keep Autism Weird, Rob Marino, Max, Zach, Gavin 490 Freak, Amber Grassi, and Maze Farms. And if you want to be amongst these names, consider supporting us on Patreon, where if you upgrade to the real one tier, you'll receive a bonus episode every month on top of other perks. And before we move into the episode, I just want to thank the rest of our Patreon supporters like Jason Daphnis, Kevin Cookman, Awat, Ali Eleanor, Cheddaz, Nato, Eric Chow, Josh, Holiday Kirk, Tyrone Juhan, Drew Wharton, Jane Amjadi, Chance Holdup, Alexis Davin, Cody Gagan, Barely March, Miguel LaFleur, Will Griffin, Corbin Camage, Gavlin, Matthew, Ethan Sapir, Matthew McPherson, Randy Donaldson, Eleanor Grams, Wilfer Thrill, KRS420, Lily, Jacqueline Kataga, Alec Felder, Toxic Trees, Molly O'Brien, AJ Moser, Race Red Baby, Matthew Harry, Jack Tiggleman, Sarah L., Jeremy Bull, Alex Gritchmanoff, and Derek Pemberton. Anyways, though, enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Indieheads podcast. I am your host, Matty Monroe, here for our final episode of 2024. And boy, it's a doozy because this is the Album of the Year episode, folks. This is the Album of the Year episode. We're going to go over our top 10, wink 10, question mark, albums of the year. And of course, I am joined on this journey with Rose and Jackie, a little Best New Pod reunion. It's only been 3 weeks since we recorded the last episode we did, and then we're recording another one next week.
I'm just so lonely.
and we're recording another one next week. So again, if you like this crew, well, you get to keep this crew, as we've got a Best New Pod bonus episode that'll be up on the Patreon feed first things, our first episode of January of next year, 2025. But here we are, Album of the Year episode. It's been a year, as we all know, of course. It's been a year. And before we get into the top 10 proper, I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on the year of 2024 overall for music, because I feel like I've heard most people that people, and when by people I do mean like other music writers and critics and people that are involved in our world, have called this like a really great year and the best year of the 2020s so far. So I'm curious where you guys lie in that spectrum between this is not a good year to best year ever, question mark, Jason voice, best year ever.
I can start. Wise woman bows her head. There's no difference between good and bad music years, you idiot, you fucking moron. I mean, I kind of do subscribe to the, like, there are no good years in music. There are you having good years in music, you being tapped into good years in music. Like, because how do you define it? I think for me, this is a slightly below average year in that I do not really have like a totemic, like, holy shit, this album changed my life album this year. But I have several records that do mean a lot to me, you know? It's like a lot of very good, not quite a lot of like 5-star classics, but I still feel like there's been a wide breadth of stuff, and I think it's just been a good year for music in the sense that, like, the things that I worried were going to be the things we talked about all year long, like Beyonce and Taylor Swift, were not that for once. And even though, like, is the new pop girly discourse more annoying? Who's to say? But, like, it's different, at least.
Yes. I just got word back from Joe Biden. That's it is his Mimi Espresso or
God
whatever the
damn
fuck.
it.
I don't know. Like I'm not tapped
Breaking
into the
news.
I'm not tapped into the discourse anymore. I can very firmly say like I'm having a similar year to Jackie, but in a much more stark divide where I think this is like one of the most interesting years for underground experimental like slightly left of center music in a very long time. And then like in terms of like, big banner records that we can all get behind, this year is fucked. Nobody liked anything. It's
Yeah.
I think it's a land of contrast in that respect, where it's like the things people are really passionate about are the far end of the spectrum, but there were so many albums that were like giant names that when you do like communal voting as we did here, like I'm looking down the list of people that are on our list, and like a lot of these are really big names that like Stereo Gum would put on their anticipation with no actual evidence that they have an album coming out core, like
okay.
just
So I'm really glad the Indieheads podcast is finally talking about the Rins. Okay, I've been wanting to talk about the Rins for a long time. Everyone knows I'm a
Well, we're
huge
gonna
Rins
cut
fan.
you off there, Rose. We're gonna cut you off there. I'll give. We should probably get in the list, but I do want to give my opinions. I think I'm in a very similar boat where it's been a good year, but a great year. I can't quite say. There's definitely been like for me like instant classics, like instantly in the Matty core canon stuff, but not as much in like compared to previous years, and even the stuff that I'm like instant classics, like the passion is not as it's not at the level it was like let's say like last year like in my book Sun Tub. Like there's no record that's reaching those heights this year for me, but some that come very very close. But yeah, so our list this year, I will say, listeners, our pool was a little smaller this year. I do think we had less people voting overall, and I think that's just like yeah, that's just kind of how the year. That's just the year. I think there's some folks that just kind of dipped out of interest this year when it came to music, and I think in some ways our list does reflect it, but still I would still say this is a good list. Maybe yeah, it's very similar to some of the other publications, but like we're not the fucking quietest, we're not tiny mixtapes, we're not.
I'm trying to make it so we need to be the
We're
Tiny
trying, but
Mixtapes reunion.
sometimes again we have some deep eureka heads in the house, and then others we have some basic bitches, non-derogatory, like
I think it's
if
also
you
just it's voting. This is what voting for lists is for any of you people that like
exactly.
want to criticize lists. Like I have a lot of cool idiosyncratic shit on my list that I was the only person that voted for, and then I voted
Yeah,
for
same.
like the band that we're going to talk about as part of our number 10 slot. And it's like, guess what? That's how things end up on a list. Is that things that are
They,
bigger
I
inherently get more consensus.
I want it to be known, I really tried. Raphael Torel Spectral Evolution Heads. I was out here in the trenches campaigning. I try. I know every other publication has it except us, but I really tried, guys. I really
Yeah,
tried.
Likewise, I
we
know the Jackie heads will be bummed that Argo Nuff Taking a Break from My Phone is not the number one album of our year, but it is the number one album to sample the Big Doinks and Amish guy, so it owns that award to itself.
and I also I tried for Spear of the Beehive, Chanel Beats, Lip Critic, but hey, I was happy to give Lip Critic. We gave him Freshman of the Year. That was a nice, for me that was nice. But let's just get into the list proper. Number 10, we have a tie. We have a tie for number 10. These got the
Although
same amount of points.
I will say, so I voted
Mm.
for this before I had like embarked on my like reconsideration. I would have bumped one of these two albums up probably from where I voted for it the first time. So like with that in mind, like it's kind of the 10, but we'll talk about both of them.
Yeah, but we have to go with what the votes were at the time of the ballots being due, and we had a tie. They had the same amount of points and the same spread, as in the two people that voted for these records. It was like the same point amount, so there was no way to do like a tiebreaker. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this person had higher. There was no way to do a tiebreaker. It was like the same. It was crazy. So our tie for number 10, Waxahachie, Tiger's Blood, and The Cure, Songs of a Lost World. Waxahachie. Uh, I guess I think this is more in the AJ camp. I believe AJ had it pretty high on his list. So if I can get a transmission from him, I will see what I can do when we get to the edit. That being said, I did do a re-listen of this album, and it is good. It is a good Waxahachie record. I don't know for sure if I'm still fully in on her whole deal, but uh, there are some extremely strong songs here. Obviously, we talked about Right Back to It on the Pod Awards episode, and that is absolutely one of the best singles of the year. It came out in January and still held pretty strongly on my vague song of the year list in my head. I'm like, wow, this is, yeah, still a great song, still hits, still amazing. And the rest of the record, I would say, like, arguably, I do think this might be like I might like it more than Saint Cloud, which may be a hot take, but
I
I'm
definitely
not
do, but
someone.
I'm famously the
Sorry,
Saint Cloud snooze girl. So
Mhm. I do think there's a little more. I think having folks like MJ Linnerman enter the mix, and I do think like the fact that Katie has already made a record like this, that she can make it better the next go around. I do think that has helped. Where it's like, hey, she has a stronger band behind her. Obviously, she's still a tremendous songwriter, and I do think that she's firing on all cylinders on a number of songs here. And yeah, just adding the right amount of collaborators and all that stuff, it makes for what I think is a stronger record than St. Cloud and a worthy sequel of sorts to that record. Although, of course, we still have a number of folks out there that wish she would go back to indie rock. And again, folks, I know what it's like to cope. All right, me and Jackie, we're Death Grips fans. We know all about cope. Okay,
I'm also
it's
one of
never gonna
those
happen.
people, sort of, but also not really. Like, I think that people that like Waxahachie really seem to be enjoying this era. I just think that this era is making me realize that I like Waxahachie. I don't love Waxahachie, right? Like, if this is
Mhm.
where she's like truly settling into like what makes the most sense, then maybe it's not for me, and maybe Out of the Storm was like a little more of an anomaly than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
It's solid though,
good record.
not bad.
Yeah, good record. Don't have much more to say than other publications. Again, it's one of the highest on the year in aggregate. So you know, we like it. We give it the Indieheads podcast endorsement, which is the
Now,
most important
didn't have a lot
endorsement
to
of them
say
all.
about that. However, rev up those fucking
Ooh,
fryers, people, because we're about to talk about undersung, underappreciated, little known band, The Cure. Have you ever heard of these guys?
Yeah, actually, they helped me clinch my win this year on the 2024 Music League draft. I joined a music fantasy league, and The Cure finally won me everything because it turns out people really like British people. I didn't realize this until now.
Here's the thing. I said this to Lily earlier this year, and it really crystallized. I don't like British people because of their Britishness. I happen to like a lot of bands that are also just from there by happenstance, you know. And the Cure are like the difference between the Smiths and the Cure are the Smiths are like fundamentally capital E English, where the Cure just happened to be from there, you know. And that is not why I like this record, but the Cure,
We can all make
Songs of a
our
Lost
excuses.
World.
I get it, Jackie.
Listen, I'm coping too, but let me tell you,
Listen, you'll hear me coping with the British thing like I don't know, like
10.
9 albums from now.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
nine albums from now.
Uh,
We'll get to that.
but I was listening to this album to prepare for today and immediately realized that this segment is called Jackie Talk About Songs of a Lost World Without Crying Challenge, difficulty level impossible. This album is fucking devastating on like several different levels, and the thing that I keep coming back to, and I swear to God, I might at some point I will stop. Maybe, I don't know. But this is Twin Peaks: The Return. It is someone coming back to a prior work, and it's like, yeah, I know I've been telling this exact story my whole life about how like there's this deep darkness and all my friends are dying and I'm alone, but like I'm old now and it's actually happening, and it's not even so much a like, oh, his brother died during the recording of this record and it's a grief record, as much as it is like, it's so rare that an artist this late in their career makes anything worthwhile, and that's usually because like the place that they were making music from when they were young is so different from where they are when they're old, and they either try to go back to where they were or they try to go off on some other adventure that doesn't work. Robert Bobby Smith he was feeling the existential end of life crisis when he was like 20. So this album is like, I've been preparing my whole life to write an album about how everyone I love is dying. And it is like, it's the album that has made me cry the most this year by like a wide margin. Partly because it does the disintegration thing where like he just builds up for like 3 minutes to the point that there's like one lyric and that's all it takes to just turn. It's basically like an emotional devastation foreplay. Like he just works me up into a lather and then he'll say one thing that just like crumbles me like a house of cards. I think this record is incredible. I have heard the complaints about the mixing, which I actually think are a little fair. Like I think it sounds good, but I think the mixing is okay. Hi, Phoebe just joined me. She disagrees.
Aw.
Phoebe thinks the mixing on this album is muddy as hell and that it ruins it. But if you're someone that listens to this album and like that's your takeaway, like seek help because this album is so deep and beautiful. And if your biggest thing is like, oh, the mix is muddy, like whatever, grow up. But also, I think that the people, and not to use Cal 50 as a straw man, but the people that have said that like the lyrics on this album are sort of really simplistic or like the same thing Robert Smith has been writing his whole life about how he's looking up at the moon and he's all alone and he feels really sad about it. It hits entirely different on this record, and it made me think a lot about the 60 songs that explain the 90s episode that they just did about Johnny Cash for the 2000s for the Rick Rubin tapes, and particularly for obviously his cover of Hurt, and like the fact that Johnny Cash singing all everyone I've loved leaves me in the end out as he's on death's door, and how it hits in this completely different like David Bowie Black Star way that's different from the original Nine Inch Nails version. And like that is what this record is to Disintegration. Like it is someone being like, I know I already made an album about the great emptiness that awaits us all at the end of this, but like this time for real, I'm freaked out about it. And that's why it's so good. I don't know if the other Cure albums that supposedly have been written will be as good as this one, or if like this is the real concentrated dose and the next ones are just going to be sort of like B-sides to that. But whatever the case, I can't believe this album exists. I especially can't believe it's as good as it is. I think my favorite song on the record is And Nothing Is Forever, the second song, which is like kind of the most hopeful and optimistic, but then because of that is also the most devastating. Like truly, I genuinely think that like 80% of all art that's ever been made is about what this song is about, but this is a song that just like says it uncomplicatedly. Like the song is about promise you'll be with me in the end, say we'll be together, and that you won't forget. Like, yeah, that's what all of us are doing. We're trying to make something and be known and not be forgotten, and coping with the fact that like everything has to end. All songs come to an end, as this album talks about. It's some heavy shit. But it's also some beautiful shit, and I really, 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 really love this record, Songs of a Lost World. What do y'all think about this album?
I did listen to this album today, and I did immediately was like, I lack the necessary context for this to have a big grand impact on me, because I have not dug that deep into the Cure's discography. I was meant to during a music writer's exercise like 2 years ago. And then I think by the time I got to that record, I was just like checked out of doing music writer's exercise. But I did like it, and it was pretty clear to me, be like, okay, this is definitely like, this isn't just, oh, this is like a pretty good like late period record from the Cure. It's like, oh, this is just like a good record from the Cure. Like I immediately see what the fans are saying, like, oh, hey, this is probably their best record since the 90s. Like, yep, that sounds correct to me. So I think I have to probably listen to some more Cure records to get maybe a more like a greater appreciation for how this sounds. Like I don't like, we talked about Black Star on Best New Pod a few weeks ago, and I think that's a record where like I would have liked it at the time probably, but I think because I had already done the dive into Bowie's discography before listening to Black Star, it had that much of an impact on me. So I think this is probably a similar case scenario for this record of it is the Cure is a daunting band to get into, because again, they have so many classic records that it does feel overwhelming. But god damn it, I'm going to do it this year, or not this year. I'm going to do it next year. I swear to God, I'm going to listen to more Cure and get into them because I fucking like The Cure. Everything I've heard from them, I like. So, god damn it, I'm gonna do it next year. If I don't
Hell
do it,
yeah.
listeners, it's not my fault because because we literally have I mentioned this in the Discord. We basically have episodes planned out until February of next year. That is the content schedule. Because we spent so long on Best New Pod that we let Gavin and Violet and Max and all these people just like cooking in the stew. All right, they've been brewing a stew, and we got to eat that stew for the next year or so. But that's besides the point. Good record.
Hell yeah. I do
I
think
see
the
Rose.
context
Rose, you don't have
helps.
anything?
I have definitively never been a Cure listener. I'm not goth. I'm not that kind of homosexual. Sorry, guys. I can't help you there.
As I've said publicly, Robert Smith is the literal Robert Smith and his longtime partner Mary are the inventors of the needing a boyfriend who is a little bit gay lifestyle. And there are two facts I want to reveal about them that are really cute. One is that they have been life partners for a long time, but Robert Smith does not want to have a kid because he believes that he did not want to be born into this world and does not want to subject someone else to that against their will, and he thinks that's wrong. A, and B, they have 26 nieces and nephews, so they are essentially just like fun aunt and uncle.
So you the gay uncle?
He is the gay uncle, exactly. But then the other incredible thing is I was reading the Wikipedia page today, and here's a paragraph. So there's this whole thing about how Robert Smith like says he's attracted to mentally unstable people because you never know what they're going to do next, and that seems to be a part of what he likes about his longtime partner. And here's the paragraph. While The Cure was recording Wish at Shipton Manor between 91 and 92, among the objects pinned to the wall was Mary's Manor Mad Chart, listing the 17 members of the manor staff and residents, including the Cure and their entourage, quote, in order of instability. Mary was ranked in second place after a kitchen worker named Louise. Smith said at this time, "We all voted and we had an award night. It was very moving." So yeah, Cure Records, they like have award shows where they're like, which one of us is the most like fucked up in the head? And the winner was almost Robert Smith's GF, the original Manic Pixie Dream Girl, hero to many, including me.
Many
we
are
stand.
saying that I can fix her. Many are saying this.
It's true.
And Robert Smith has made it his life career to say to I can fix her, but part of the magic is it's like who's the guy who's rolling the boulder up the mountain, and it's like Sisyphus.
I mean,
I don't know why I forgot Sisyphus. It's like Sisyphus. I can fix her. You will never fix her, but the journey is rolling that boulder that says
not
you
even
can do
not
it.
even to make a joke. That is what is so beautiful about "And Nothing Is Forever," because it's the song where he is saying the two things at once. He's saying that like nothing is forever, this can't last, but say we'll be together forever, and that's all that will matter to me, even though that's impossible. Like, that's the sentiment of the song. Like, as long as you tell me, like, everything's gonna be okay and you'll always be with me, like, I can cope with the fact that that's not true. And that's some heavy shit, but it's also very sweet.
Damn. 65. Damn. I knew he was up there in age, but damn, he's
and much
ready
like
for
Twin
retirement.
Peaks: The Return, it's like it was one thing when he said that, but now that he's that old and he's still wearing the goth makeup and he's singing these songs, it's just like there's a pathos there that wasn't there. It's like old Coop. It's like he's got wrinkles now. The past can't live forever.
Well, there we go. All
Jackie,
right.
is there like a Cure song that is like the musical equivalent of fucking Wally Brando? I gotta ask.
There is not on this album, although I do
Then
think
why the fuck am I listening?
it's true. It's true. This album, the thing it lacks that Twin Peaks: The Return has is silliness. There is zero silliness on
Robert
this record.
Smith's Dharma is not the road, and I'm never gonna give a shit until he learns.
However, I will say the one other thing they have in common is that they end in a super chill and not at all bone deep upsetting way. Is also how this album is similar to Twin Peaks: The Return. End Song is a song that I do not plan to listen to very often, is all I will say about that.
Well, there we go. All right. let's move on. Let's move into number 9 on our album of the year list, and a record that I'm a big fan of. So very happy that it made. I'm happy that we got some good Matty core representation in this one, and that is Wishy 777, the debut record from the Indiana band. And of course, I like this record a lot. We talked about it a little bit on the Pod Awards episode with our Freshman of the Year nomination for Wishy, and yeah, I guess more on this record. I, like many folks, am a big fan of 90s alternative, as of course we did a whole series about it, and we had a blast doing that series, in part because, again, the songs were good and they gave us a lot of material to mine from. But that's a whole other thing. But 90s alternative, I do think, is like, it is such an amazing period for music that simply cannot be recreated. Like, the this was, of course, an era where basically if Kurt Cobain liked your band, you would get signed to a major label. Simple as that. And so you had all these weirdos getting major label resources for the first time and using that to, to continue to highlight and make their already great songwriting even stronger. And of course, now we're not in that era. There actually is kind of a weird indie boom, but it's much smaller. Like, it's really more of a shoegaze boom. Like, the fact that the Julie record that came out this year and the New Dad record that came out this year are both on like Atlantic, I think. That's insane. Why is a major label signing shoegaze bands in 2024? I know why, it's TikTok, but even then it's still very absurd.
Because these kids are on their dang ass phone, Matty. That's what's they be on that damn cell phone.
This is true. They be on that phone. But what I do like about Wishy compared to, I guess, other like shoegaze bands and other bands that are maybe aping like 90s alternative is that I do think, like, the thing I've said about this record is that, like, it is the best of 90s alternative all boiled into one record, and that is all of it. That is little bits of grunge, little bits of shoegaze, little bits of power pop. It's just like a nice healthy mix of, all these things that were kind of in the stream of water in the 90s, but modernized in a way that does not feel nostalgic for the sake of it. Like, it is simply, hey, we're kind of using 90s alternative as our launching point for our songwriting, and in turn you get some of the best and strongest songwriting this genre, whatever you want to call this genre, has seen in quite some time. I do feel like it has like a nice kinship of sorts with the Hotline TNT record that came out this year, but like, if you cleared out the fog of the Hotline TNT record and the songs underneath that fog were just that much stronger. Like, obviously title track is incredible, just a really sweet power pop tune. Love on the Outside, top 5 song this year, one of the most perfect singles of the year. Just has some just monster chorus, some great lyrics in the verses, just one of the best love songs that I've heard in quite some time. Spit is an incredible outro where they really do turn up the amps a little bit. You get a little more of the I guess you understand why people want to call Wishy a shoegaze band. I don't personally ascribe to that. I think I would much lean more towards like power pop and alternative versus shoegaze, but Spit, you do hear it in there in that song in particular. um Six Sweet, also just incredible intro, and really the thing that I love with this record is that you do get like you get the dual vocalists, and I do think some bands could benefit from that, and some could, not benefit from, hey, maybe cut one of those vocalists out. But Nina and Kevin are just both really incredible in strong songwriters that really complement each other really well. Like, you can definitely hear where they are different as songwriters. I think Nina at times leans more into not quite ballad territory, but definitely in the softer side. I'm thinking more like fucking Sixpence None the Richer. Like, that's definitely, I hear that in Nina a little bit. And then Kevin definitely a little more in the heavier grungier kind of stuff, that stuff that's a little more up tempo. But again, I think this is a really, really strong record, one of the best debuts of the year. Again, although of course we have to mention our good friend Jay, listen up nerds. He did call this album Radio Disney Shoegaze, and we must acknowledge that. And here's the thing about that.
We're holding space for.
We're holding space. We're holding space for that comment. And here's the thing. Is Jay wrong? No, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
I mean,
here's
I
the
can
thing.
give you my opinion right now if you want. It's because I feel like I'm in a similar camp to that, which is that 90s alternative revival and shoegaze revival makes me want to.
Oh,
It's I don't please don't make me do this, man. Don't make me do this. The shit sucks ass. I'm sorry. Like I can't. I really can't with the Julie and the Wishy and the
Here,
all that shit. Like get
here's
it
the
out of my
thing.
sight. Get it out of my sight.
Usually, I am arguing with you, Rose, and saying I'll keep drinking that garbage. I really hope Wishy don't listen to this podcast episode thinking that we're going to be nice to them, because brings me no pleasure to report that I also really don't like this record. I think it's not bad, but it is so close to being my business and isn't that I was peeved the whole time trying to like this record. And I don't think it's like the Radio Disney shoegaze thing. It's more just that, like, I don't know. A little bit of this is also made worse by the fact that the Sunshine record just came out and is essentially like everything I wanted this record to be and was not. And I just was like A/B testing them right now. And it's not that the Wishy record is bad and the Sunshine record is amazing, but like there are just certain edges to each one that are just a little more my business, a little less my business. Just, I don't know. I don't really like Kevin's voice, to be honest.
that's fair.
And I think that the tunes, like, while sort of catchy, are kind of just in a neither nor zone. Like, I'd rather they be more power poppy, or I'd rather there be more like focus on the textures. And records like the Sunshine record or like the Dive record from this year's show that it's like you can do both. You can make a very interesting, textured, atmospheric, shoegaze oriented record that still has like riffs and melodies and hooks that really work. And I know there are lots of people that like this band, and they seem like cool people, but to me, like, the part of Matty's brain that likes porches and I don't get that is similar sort of thing here. It's just I could hear a little bit of the Hoops, like, porches era just like in there, and I don't like that.
Say porches.
I had to say it, Matty. I'm sorry.
Why are you? I mean, here's the thing. I did like the Portraits record from this year, but even then, I still feel insulted. I like the one album that came out in 2016, and I kind of like the one that came out this year. All right, to be like, oh, Matty, the Portraits fan. I don't like that. That's
I just wanted to bring up another record just to say that, like, I am not I am not yet at the place where, like, I am so cynical that I cannot take these bands at face value. Like, Sunshine is a band, it's their first record, and they're like a young Chicago band, and they're very similar to Wishy in every way except for like remembering to make the songs good, in my humble opinion. So I think that I'm just at a loss with this record. I really did. It's in a category. I'm working on an album of the year write-up thing where I've just dumped a bunch of records into categories, and this is firmly in the I wanted to like this, I promise category.
Our number 9 album of the year, Wishy 777. To swing it back to the
friend
positive.
of the podcast, Rena, whose birthday was yesterday, and is probably very upset with me right now.
Rena Flow. Well, good. That's what you're getting. That's what you're getting.
But hey, look, I voted for this record. I think Will voted for this record. I like it quite a bit. It is absolutely my business, and it's just, I think it rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a record that rocks, and that is where I will leave it. So let's get into number 8 on the album of the year list. Number 8, Jessica Pratt, Here in the Pitch. No surprise, one of the most critically acclaimed records of the year. But I will say I was actually really surprised of how much I like this record. I liked Quiet Signs at the time, but I could kind of was like, I like this, but it wasn't quite like sticking with me compared to how it was sticking with like other critics. But this one, I get it now. And I think part of it is just the fact that there's a little more going on here compared to Quiet Signs. There's some more percussion. There is some more. This isn't just, kind of very singular folk songs. Like, hey, there's some percussion. There is, you can tell that there is a band. There's a little more going on here beneath the surface. But even then, I do think it still retains the Jessica Pratt magic, which is she just sounds like nobody else right now. And by that I do mean like there's nobody that sounds like her right now, because all of her stuff sounds like it was like it sounds like a record. Like you go to a European record store, you go to the used section, you're digging through and you find this like, oh, Jessica Pratt, here's this like weird folk record. I've never heard of this. And then you put it on, and this is what it sounds like. It sounds like something that was directly pulled from like a 70s used record, binge. It's something that would get like someone on the internet be like, whoa, this record's crazy. And then, Light in the Attic or whatever these, numero group would find it and reissue it. But it's like, it was made this year. It came out this year. It was made in the last year. And I do think that that is a very specific type of magic that I don't think is just certain artists just are not capable of making records in that way, or able to recreate that feel as well as Jessica does. But that does not take away, but it is not a nostalgia play or anything like that. It's just, yeah, that's just how that's just the sound that she's going for, and she does it incredibly well. Yeah, lots of great cuts on here that I'll get into in time. But I'll leave it to my co-hosts here if they have any extra thoughts on this record.
Not a ton, honestly. I checked this out today and I like it, but it didn't grab me. I could see myself warming up to this in a way that, not to spoil our list, but like an album that is not on our list, Diamond Jubilee, is a record that I have not spent time with, not because I'm one of those it's not on streaming, I won't listen to it people, but more so because like 60s psych pop or like old these particular kinds of like 60s pop influences are not usually my bag per se, and like if I want to do hauntology, it's usually in the electronic music department, but I think this is a neat little record. I think it being 27 minutes certainly helps a lot in it not being my business, but it not really bothering me too much either. And I think World on a String is a great song.
Yeah. I will say this is a category of record that I think would be much higher on my year-end list if I like the intro more. Life is fine, but I remember when it came out, it was a big deal because, hey, first music from her in like 5 years. It comes out and I'm like, oh, I'm not really feeling this. But like once you get into the record proper after that, like Better Hate, Roll on the String, Get Your Head Out, Empires Never Know, that's where the juice is. But but the intro is kind of weak, so it kind of puts you on like a bit of a, for me at least, it's kind of a weak intro that puts me on a weird pedestal where I feel like Life is like, hey guys, like I'm Jessica Pratt and now I use percussion in my songs, and it kind of makes a big deal out of that, where I feel like the songwriting is a little weaker. Like, well, hey, I have drums now, so the drums are going to take more center stage here compared to my voice and my songwriting and all this stuff. And I do think the song is kind of weakened because of that, even if those drums do sound very good. They sound engineered wise, they sound great, but I think the song that surrounds it is not as good as most of the other stuff
I had forgotten
on this record.
that it had been 5 years since she put out music, which makes it extra funny that then shortly after this record, she hopped on an ASAP Rocky song. Like it was already
That's
funny.
so crazy.
It was already funny, but it's extra funny to be like, I'm a reclusive musician, and I'm coming back after my 5-year Sufjan Stevens hiatus, and also here's me hanging out with ASAP Rocky.
Aren't we all excited for that one? His follow up to Testing. It's coming out this year, guys. Fall 2024, right? We're still doing this. We're still doing.
I mean, unfortunately,
now, Rose, I need you to check a calendar right now. You need to check a calendar right now, and do not drink a big sip of water before you look at that calendar.
Oh God, but my throat is so groggy.
But boy, oh boy, you're gonna need some.
I gotta.
Oh no, Rose! Don't look at that calendar. No, Rose, don't do it. Don't look at the calendar.
Rose, I assume the answer to this is no, or Matty, I assume this is also no, because I did not know this. Did anyone know that there was an ASAP Rocky song released this year called Taylor Swift?
I did know about that.
Yes, actually, I did know about that.
Okay, so just me, cool.
Yeah, it's so funny that like he just cannot get this album rollout started, which is bizarre that he's had so many false starts on this like cycle.
Maddie,
Because
Like
he
the album's supposed to come out
realizes
this
that
year.
he's washed and he keeps trying to like, guys, you've got to
or
start caring about this one.
he
You got
starts
to.
rolling out a record and he gets distracted by being married to Rihanna, you know? Like,
That's fair.
it's understandable. I get it, King.
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
really think it's like a case of like one of those artists who's like, guys, 20,000 likes on my post and we'll release this new song, and it just goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, who is like excited about an A$AP Rocky record in
Jessica
2020?
Pratt, apparently.
She's
Or at least she was
people
excited
who are
about
not
the
directly
bag.
getting a bag from it. Let's be very
Exactly. Yeah, no.
yeah. Very bizarre, but still, I think this is an excellent record across the board. Aside from what I think is not a great intro. Obviously, we had the last year as one of our songs of the year, but yeah, good record. You know, rightfully one of the more acclaimed. This is actually a strange year where like the big like critic consensus records, they may not be high on my list, but they're not records that I hate, so I'm like not mad about the way things have shaken out this year. So by the way, spoiler alert, Brad is not on our list. We're going to be the one publication that where
God
Brad
damn
is
it.
not on, is not on our
I
list.
was literally about to like I was waiting to get to the end of that so I could talk about our number one record. I because Brad isn't there, but there's another one. There's another big one that I think people are really gonna go crazy for.
I have a joke to make related to Brad Summer that has to happen later, so we must save it. But yes.
I will save it for number one when we talk about the album that is not Brad, but
No,
I think a lot of people
just get set. We'll
Get
get
out,
there. We'll get there.
move.
We'll get there.
But yeah, number 8, Jessica Pratt, here in the pitch. Let's move into number 7 on our list. And you know, I want to thank.
You heard about this, folks? You heard about this? You heard about this?
Hey, who's had a more interesting year, Jay Leno or Echo Astral?
Number 7, Echo Astral.
Jay Leno did get that black eye from falling down a hill. That was pretty cool.
Only one of them looks like every Twin Peaks character at the same time. So who's to say?
Oh boy! But number 7, Echo Astral, Pink Balloons. I must ask Jackie to recuse herself from this.
I mean,
since
so here's the thing: I'm not being paid anymore to represent Echo Astral. Am I still biased? Sure. Did I vote for this? Yeah, I did. Which is we could. I was determined not to be that cringe person putting their own clients on their album of the year list. But now that I'm like more or less stepping out of the PR space for the indefinite future, I feel like it's like all bets are off. I'm here to stand. Because this is also like a record I spent a lot of this year listening to, and I know front to back in part because I've seen it performed live by JL and the gang like 7 or 8 times this year, right? So it's like, this is one of my albums of my year, even if I am obviously big red flags in case anyone listening to this podcast doesn't know, the person who ran the publicity campaign for this album and best friends with the lead singer and 7 other reasons why I'm biased. But it's good, folks. It's good.
Yes. That's the thing, is that like, you know, the record is, here's the thing, we're not the only ones, of course, because this is a record that has been praised across the board, has shown up on a number of year-end lists, so it's not like, oh, we're making it like, no, this is a, hey, we are going along with the critics here because the critics are right. This is a good record.
We've come, Matty, we've come a long way from accusing things of being industry plants to me creating media narratives that then have other people accuse Echo Astral of being industry plants. It's like, brother, I'm the industry. It's literally me in jail. Like,
but we're talking a lot about we're kind of boxing outside of the record. Let's box with the record itself. I think this is an excellent punk record. I think Jael is a powerful vocalist and lyricist. I did a radio show where I put this on my list. It was not my top 10, but it was just outside the top 10, where I would say this is probably the most, just for what it says, the most audacious record of the year. Like, I think if you want to, you know, hey, if you want to know what this year felt like, I think this is probably the first record that I would put on for somebody like, hey, you want a record that describes how this year was, yeah, go listen to Pink Balloons. You get a little bit of everything about what made this year good, great, terrible, mostly terrible, a really bad year overall, with just a bad year overall for like the greater world. But there is not cover there is fun, and there is just enjoyment to be found in the misery. And I do think I think the people is that it could be very easily a very like dark, depressing record that there's no light, but Jael is such a fantastic vocalist and lyricist that she is able to find like funny things and light things
Yes,
to
this
add into the
record would
mix where
not
it's not a
work if it was
whole.
not funny. I 1000% agree.
Exactly. It is like it's a much funnier record than maybe the narrative would tell you. And that's not the narrative of Jay. That's just the narrative of some folks who have
Yes,
given
of
this
course.
record. But yeah, just it also, again, it's a hell of a debut. This I will say, if there's anything about this year I could really say, like, the thing that I appreciate the most about this year is that this has been a hell of a year for debut records.
Mhm.
Like, I think this has been one of the strongest years for debut albums in quite some time. Like, I can't remember the last time that like so many debut albums made it to like what I would say is like my proper like top 30, top 40 list. Like, oh wow, like
Exactly. Yeah.
almost half of these are debuts technically. And and that's the thing that is also just such a commendable feat of this album, is that it is a debut and it sounds this strong. Like, this is a band that has no doubts about who they are and what they are. Like, it is just a super confident debut, and that confidence, like, it is not false confidence. It's not without merit. It is very much earned confidence all throughout. There's some big swings this record takes at times, and I do think for the most part it succeeds in getting home runs. And at worst, you're definitely getting you're definitely getting your hitter to third base. Like, you're definitely getting to third base at the very least, with some of the swings that this record takes. But again, I really love it. And Jackie, thank you for sliding me the $20 under the
No problem,
mattress.
Matty. I appreciate it.
That was really cool. You didn't hear that, listeners. You didn't hear that. Just you didn't hear any of that.
I will say
But
though,
yeah,
like, in addition to my obvious bias, my other thing with trying to figure out where to like put this album on a ranked list that is like completely impossible is also born out of the fact that, like, I know that they can do better, which is also a thing that I've been feeling a lot this year with a lot of like breakouts. Is it's like
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of records this year that were not quite like top 10 records, but it's like, I now have season tickets to this person, whatever they do next. Like, it might take one album, it might take two albums, they're gonna get there. And buddy, these Echo Astral demos I just got sent, folks, we got a stew cooking. I can't say it any other way. We have a big pot of gumbo cooking, and Mardi Gras Monroe can testify.
So is a gumbo.
We got a big pot of gumbo, and I am obviously incredibly proud of like all of the like year-end attention and shit that this has gotten. But like, truly, I think that this record worked because like the way that JL approaches songwriting, she's like not trying to write stuff that's political in a reactive way, but in a proactive way. Like, she literally sat down before last year and it was like, what is 2024 going to be like? Probably bad. And just sort of put that like North Star, it's like they say that like any whatever, a lot of the best political art, like System of a Down, Toxicity, wasn't written with knowing that 9/11 was going to happen. It's just like they've sensed a bad vibe, and then also 9/11 happened, and then like two things converged perfectly. And I think that's what Echo Astral are trying to do, and in my biased opinion, succeeding.
Well, there we go. Is it Wake Up Rose time? Is it time to wake up
It
Rose
is.
for this next entry? All right, let's get into number 6 on the album of the year list. Number 6, Ski Mask Resort. Rose has awakened. Rose, your thoughts on this album?
The sleeper has awakened. Oh, buddy. I finally went and read before you listen to anything we have to say about this fucking record, go read the resident advisor piece on Ski
Yes.
Mask that dropped last month. This is like one of the best profiles I've seen in some time, and I finally pulled it up today on my desktop for the first time because I'd only read it on my phone, so I did not get the like sick ass 3D like breakdown of his studio setup that comes with the desktop version of that. Just go read it, go look at the cool images of this guy's setup and just be like, wow, I cannot fucking believe he makes it. But Ski Mask is, oh my God, he is such a wonderfully disciplined, tightly wound artist who just consistently throws my expectations for what electronic music is right now in 2024 in terms of just like, taking the sounds of the past, those kind of 90s like club and IDM sounds and like blowing them out in ways where I'm just like, who's doing this, Like every time I put on a new Ski Mask record, I find ways to be surprised that he's like doing the Ski Mask thing again, and yet I'm still like enthralled by it. It's still engaging. It's still a unique sound, and oh God, I just this record like it's one of those ones where I don't put it in like my top 5 of the year because I think it takes just like Compro, his last really like important full length record. I know I'm like the one person who stumps for Pool, but Compro, just like Compro, this one I think really takes a little bit to get going, but like when it hits the B side, it hits a stride of songs where I'm just like, this is absurdly good structure and production and everything, even for like not just for like a techno record in 2024, but for like a record in 2024. Like fucking unbelievable tunes on the back half. We gotta discuss.
I was gonna say I love this record. I'm only like a tiny bit cold on it just because I'm like so in on everything he does that it's a little bit like the album after Compro was never gonna be like as monumental for me in that way, but like I really do love this record because it feels like the most indicative of like the breadth of his sound without really feeling like a grab bag in the way like I really like Pool too, and I really like the A, B, and C like Lucy dumps that he did on Bandcamp, but like this combines the feeling of like listening to those records which are like 16 different little cool worlds, and this manages to stitch them together in a way that feels very similar to his DJing. And I love that even though, as the piece like hilariously points out, like people come to his shows and will like put up the little phone signs that say like play this song, and he's like, buddy, why do you want me to play that depressing ass song in the club? Like I'm here to play bangers. Like I don't even have that song on my USB. But like also at the same time I appreciate that like he does think so differently about his DJ sets and his albums. Like his albums are their own like experiences that he considers for the listener in a way that's not just like, here are the songs that then I'm going to play at my DJ set, right? Like it's a completely different approach to like the electronic album, but then he's also not one of those guys that's like, I only make dance music for headphones, quote unquote. This is dance music for warehouses still, and like was remarkably similar to a lot of what I experienced in his 3-hour DJ set that I saw this year, where like it will sort of go on these like shoots and ladder digressions, but then it will like find its way back to something really immediate and really thrilling, and you will like get so lost in the digression that you'll sort of like forget that he can do a banger, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, whoa, when he drops something with a vocal for the first time in like an hour or whatever. And I think this record kind of creates that feeling as you're listening to it. And I totally agree that like I think the first half of the record is solid, but it also, and then the back half is amazing, but also the back half is so amazing in part because of the way the first half of the record like edges you until you're ready for
I feel like that's part of the Ski Mask promise to an extent, has always been like, he is the quote unquote ambient techno guy, and you're gonna have to sit through quite a bit of the ambient parts before you get to like the insane techno bits that make you go like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, but oh my God, this record makes the payoff so worth it. Like when you hit that stretch of Schneider's Paradox, BB Care, Terminal Z, Holes Wolves Dancer, just like nobody else is doing this. It's disgusting. It's beautiful. I hope we get like 20 more Ilion ski series, as well as like whatever else he's cooking. I will take as much as you can give me from this guy. Just
Yeah, as Al Pacino famously said in the movie Heat, "Give me all you got. Give me all you got."
I mean, really, the action is the juice with the ski mask songs.
I just shook my table for real. Oh my god. Yeah, Ski Mask rules. I highly recommend like all of his DJ sets, but particularly him B2B with INVT set earlier this year is really sick. His like RA mixes he's done are sick. His lot radio mix, everything's good. It's all really good. And I think he, as a guy, seems to like perfectly bridge like the very principled, very like no bullshit, but like also isn't reclusive and mysterious. He's just like, I'm a guy banging out he's Neil banging out the tunes, you know?
Yeah,
And
I mean, doesn't he have like? Hang on, I want to make sure I get the name right, just because. Oh yeah, he has a synth patch that he calls the Fartomatic. That's the energy of Ski Mask.
yeah, exactly. Like he simultaneously like doesn't take himself too seriously in the like I believe that electronic music is like God's music sort of way, but at the same time, as he sort of discusses in the profile, he's like, look, I get that this DJing stuff is kind of silly and there's a lot of people who just do this as like a jerk off thing, and he's basically saying that like I understand that this is just sort of for me, but I also do this because I believe that if I give a shit this much, that there will be people who come out to see me who maybe don't know that like music can be this good. And he's like, is valuable because it continues to help keep them away from believing that good enough is good enough, you know? And that's exactly the right level of like taking yourself seriously without like huffing your own farts. It's great. We love Ski Mask.
You simply must respect the craft. It's there's nothing else to it.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the incredible lead of the Ski Mask profile is a Ski Mask is sitting in a 5-star hotel enjoying a 3-course meal, spliff, takeout, spliff, and shout out to the god.
Yeah, good record that I listened to for the first time today that I'm going to have to revisit because I like a lot of Ski Mask stuff, but you know, for some reason, I think partially why this probably slipped on my listening is just because he's very anti-streaming, does not have his shit up on streaming services, which I very much respect. But you know, I'm a little baby boy. I need it into the Spotify, otherwise I won't listen to it. But I know I really like this a lot. Some of the strongest stuff he's put out.
Shout out to that guy who tried to pay Ski Mask $10,000 personally to put his music back on Spotify,
that was so
and
funny.
Ski Mask just said,
"I would have
no.
folded. I would have if I would have folded 10K. I would have folded."
But Matty, this is a guy who, in his very recent RA profile, has a picture of him wearing a Death Grip sweater in front of his synth. So this guy knows a thing or two about "fuck you, I won't do what you tell me."
That's true.
What can you say? It's just you love to see him. Give me like 20 more Ski Mask records. That's all I'm saying.
True.
He has a stronger moral fiber than I do, and I respect the hell out of it. But let's get into the top 5 if we're all good to move into.
What a transition!
What a transition! Number 5 on our album of the year list. Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us.
I'm so glad they're back. I thought This Life was a really good single. I'm glad to hear more tunes from them. I'm glad it's been like how many years since their last record? God, it's over a decade. Wow, that's crazy, dude. And like,
Rose, I didn't know you were a hater of the last record.
I didn't hate the last record. Let me be very clear. I'm just saying, like, I'm so excited. Father of the Bride is finally here. It's finally here, guys. Father of the Bride, the follow that we've all been waiting for. There are no other Vampire Weekend records. There are no other things to talk about with this band ever. It's 2019. Everything is really good. The future is bright, folks.
So if you can't tell, none of us voted for this record on our list, but I do have a transmission from someone that did vote for this record, and that is Will for Thrill. So let's hear what Will for Thrill thought about this record.
Hello, it's your boy Will for Thrill here, coming out of my podcast retirement to give a transmission about Only God Was Above Us, the fifth studio album by American indie rock band Vampire Weekend, released on April 5th, 2024 through Columbia Records. It marks the third collaboration between the band and their longtime producer, Ariel Reichshed. It is also the first album recorded by the band as a trio of vocalist, guitarist Ezra Koenig, bassist Chris Bio, and drummer Chris Thompson, after the 2016 departure of keyboardist Rostam Batman Gulige. 2019's Father of the Bride, the first Batman Gulige-less Vampire Weekend album, was created and promoted by Koenig as a solo project, with Bio and Thompson only involved for the album's tours. It received universal acclaim from music critics. To give some background, Ezra Koenig began to write the lyrics for Only God Was Above Us between 2019 and 2020, while primarily recording sessions took place over the following years in Manhattan, Los Angeles, London, and Tokyo. The album was co-produced by Koenig and the band's longtime collaborator Ariel Reichshed, with additional production by the band's drummer Chris Thompson and former band member Rostam Batman Gulige. It was mixed by David Friedman and mastered by Emily Lazar. The project draws artistic inspiration from the 20th century New York City aesthetic.
I was just asking.
Is he reading the Wikipedia page?
He is reading the Wikipedia page, word for word.
1988 New York Daily News article.
God damn
showing
it.
the album's artwork, photographed by Steven Seagal. The article recounts the incident involving Aloha Airlines Flight 243, in which a structural failure caused the aircraft's roof
There are
to be
2
torn
minutes
off
left
the flight.
of the recording.
The phrase "Only God was above us" was quoted from one
God
of the
damn it,
passengers.
Will.
In a press release, "Only God Was Above Us" described as direct yet complex, showcasing the band as at its grittiest and most beautiful and melodic.
God damn it.
The first two singles on the album were Capricorn and Gen X Cops, released on February 16th, 2024, alongside 2 music videos. Only God Was Above Us was released on April 5th, 2024.
By the way, Rose is not here. Rose
To celebrate
dipped.
the release of the album,
Rose
the band
dipped.
began the album's tour at Moody Amphitheater in Austin, Texas on April 8th, Koenig's 40th birthday, during a total solar eclipse.
All right,
During the tour's
Rose
encores,
isn't
they played
here,
improvised covers of songs requested
so I'm
by
gonna
the
do a bit.
audience. Only God Was Above Us received acclaim from critics. On Metacritic, the album has a weighted average score of 88 out of 100, based on 23 reviews, indicating universal acclaim. Pitchfork gave the album a score of 8.6 out of 10, as well as the site's best music designation. The site's Matthew Strauss wrote in his review, "Only God Was Above Us is also the most honest album Vampire Weekend has made. An encapsulation of what the band does best, melodic and abstruse in Koenig's own masterful way." The album debuted on the Billboard 200 at number 27, their first album to miss the top 20. It also lasted a solitary week on the chart.
Fucking god damn it. All right, well there we go. Number 5 on our list, Vampire Weekend. Only God Was Above Us. Let's get into number 4 on the list. What is number 4 on the list, Jackie?
Number 4 on the list is Arouge Aftab's Night Rain. This
Yes.
is one that I've been a fan of Arouge. I do have to double declare I am biased here in the sense that not only do I know the person who does Arouge's publicity, but also this is a record mixed and mastered by Daddy Kev. And not to be that person that like knows exactly one mixed mastering engineer, but like this is an immaculately engineered record. IMO sounds fucking fantastic. But that's the Arouge thing. Like she's someone that could be easy to take for granted, and I'm saying that like I find it easy to take Arouge for granted because she came out so fully formed with Vulture Prince, and like it can be easy to be like, yeah, that's just like really good, critically acclaimed stuff, and it's high on the end of your list. But is it like really something I love? I don't know. And I threw this album on again today, and yeah, it's just really good. It really is that good. Like perfect example of critically acclaimed, quote unquote NPR Friends of Bob Boylan core like artist that is that good. And especially like every time I've seen Arouge live, and I'm just sort of my ADHD ass is forced to sit my ass down and listen. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this is like really special. I was just listening to the Bandsplain year-end episode they posted today, and Rob compared Arouge's voice to Sade, which I had never thought about before. But I was like, yeah, I can see that kind of connection, you know. And I think this record is really fucking gorgeous instrumentally. Like the team here between like the VJ Iyer feature and just like the general band that Arouge has playing on these tracks is just like truly spectacular shit. IMO.
Yeah. And you know, my thoughts on this record. Originally conceived as an album centering on the Urdu language poetry.
God damn it!
I will not do the will bit of reading the Wikipedia page. Rose, did you miss all that which has happened?
I knew it was happening about 5 seconds in, and I walked out to go get my water and take a piss, like I was already planning to do. So, whatever.
Okay. But we have another transmission. This time will presumably be an actual proper transmission, and first time on the pod in a long time. Here's Zach's thoughts on this record.
Hello there. Happy holidays. This is Zach for the first time in a long time, and I just wanted to send in a quick little transmission, a first for me, to say a few words about Arouge Aftab's Night Rain, seen as it's my album of the year, and I don't have time to make the recording session tonight so I can discuss it with everybody else. Now, the reason that this is my album of the year, a year which also included incredible albums from artists I cherish, like Waxahachie, like Jessica Pratt, like Jillian Goddamn Welch, who's probably my favorite artist ever, point blank, is that it feels like an achievement of complete mastery. It was Mark Richardson, writing up the album for Pitchfork's year-end list, who said that Night Rain represents a culmination of her career. From the ambient experimentation of Siren Islands, to the refined balladry of Vulture Prince, to the freeform looseness of last year's similarly brilliant Love in Exile. And that's something that I think really hits close to the heart of this album's greatness. What's most illustrative of this, I feel, is a 3-track stretch near the start of the album. You've got her take on a standard, Autumn Leaves, that turns a near 80-year-old song into something ceremonial and intoxicating and dark and thrillingly new. Then there's Bolo Na, which is a love song that has origins that date back to when she was in high school. She wrote it when she was in high school, threw it away because she thought it was too cheesy, and brought it back for this album. It has a verse from More Mother, and she just completely reorients the entire album around her personality. You can feel the gravity shift when she starts talking. It's one of the most exciting moments of the year, which is a little paradoxical for an album like this that doesn't really get the heart racing like, say, the New Sound, for instance. And then there's Saki, which is this collaboration with VJ Ayer that, contrary to feeling like just a cast-off from the Love in Exile sessions maybe, it feels like, and this is something Lily said that I thought was really astute, it feels like the air on the album clears just to allow room for it to exist. That these 3 songs that seem so different from each other instead manage to coalesce without breaking the transfixing mood that Aftab has conjured speaks to the tonal and formal command she wields so expertly throughout the album. An album like this takes a village, and she definitely didn't do it alone. Besides the guests who are given feature credits, like More Mother and Chocolate Genius Incorporated, you also have Shahzad Ismaili. You even have Elvis Costello playing Wurlitzer on Last Night Reprise, which I think is just a delightful little tidbit. But even with the spirit of generosity, it still belongs entirely and undeniably to her. And though the album songs are by many voices, the poet Maloa by Chanda, Brevera Mercer, Rumi, The album shines brightest when Aftab's own words take center stage. Whiskey especially feels like a song that's going to be a future standard. Something that's modern and yet completely timeless. The sort of thing that feels like it's always existed but had never been given life until now. It is, in summary, an album that captures one of our greatest working artists in complete command of every tool in her bag of tricks and reaching a new summit of her talents, of her greatness. It took a lot for an album to truly separate itself from the pack for me this year, because I do feel this is the best year for music in a long, long time. But Night Rain is just such an album. Something that is singular and syncretic and wholly original. The kind of album that only one person could ever make. And luckily, we happen to be alive at the same time as her.
There we go. All right. Any other thoughts on this record?
Said it all pretty well.
All right. Let's get into number 3 on this list. All right.
5 shift.
Randy
Massive
Newman's
5 shift.
Randy Newman's I Love LA is playing on the loudspeaker as we're talking, so we got to be real loud. Number 3, Kendrick Lamar, G&X. Again, very late entry to the list, all things considered, considering when it came out, but one that I would say is deserved. But I'm not from the city of Los Angeles. I may have spent some time there, but Jackie is our resident LA girly. Jackie, your thoughts on G&X by Kendrick Lamar?
Kendrick Lamar, he's good. More exciting opinions about music at 11.
Fork and drawer.
Exactly. I mean, we talked a little bit about. I gave a little transmission about the year in Kendrick, and particularly Not Like Us. But I do think that, like, looking at this album solely through the prism of like a quote unquote victory lap for the beef is, I think, missing the fact that this is just like a damn good album. And I think simultaneously a like we're so back moment from the last record, but also a we're so back moment for like reestablishing Kendrick Lamar as non-ho scaring music, as music that is like party music even when it has ideas. And I think this record is just like so much fun in a way that I would have never guessed. Like, I was excited when it dropped. I was excited as I was listening to it, but I never expected that I would have a Kendrick record again that just feels like I want to put it on all the time. I'm humming songs from it all the time. It was hard for it to actually ride to the number 1 spot on this list, but for my internal rankings of albums I have done a silly little dance around my house to, either listening to or sometimes I'm just thinking about it. Like, every once in a while I will just like walk down the stairs and just all of a sudden a line from GNX will pop into my head and I'll just do like a little shimmy. Like, I just dance like that little guy that from the Halloween episode, the little dancing animatronic guy. Like, that's me.
Oh, the skeleton?
The skeleton. Yeah, that's me every time I hear this record. I just shake. I'm excited. I think it's very fun. I think the beats are good. I totally do understand not just the contrarian opinions on this album in general, but specifically the, like, if you're too much of a rap nerd, the whole, like, Drakeo elephant in the room aspect of this might, like, damper your expectations. And I did also want to try to not be a little too recency bias here, because it's new and it's shiny, but goddamn, it's really good. IMO. I just think it's really solid, and whether it's the warm-up to something else, whether it's the only Kendrick record we're getting, whether Damn will be followed by Nation, I think this is just a fun-ass album that I like to listen to. And I like when Dodie6 says, who the fuck I am, I feel like Joker. I like how simple and stupid that is. I like how empty-headed this album is, sincerely.
Yes, it is definitely a welcome reprieve after Mr. Morale, which critics like to use. When it comes to that record, like using the terms, oh, it's thorny, it's
a
confrontational.
complicated album.
And I
But
think
it
that's all a
actually
bunch
was
of
those
bullshit
things.
because that you're just covering up for the fact that it's a bad record.
It's both. It's both.
It is those things, but it's also that does not mean that it's
But
good.
it sucks
It's
ass. The songs aren't
both.
good. He forgot to make the songs good. We can acknowledge this, guys.
I agree. There are people who disagree, but I agree.
I will say, to be fair, I think now that this record has come out and we've had a little time to sit on it, I do I won't say that Mr. Morale is like good all of a sudden. Like, no, it's bad, but it is. He had to get that out of the system. Like there's some shit he went through in those 5 years where it's like, I got to get this out on record. I don't care if it's good. I just got to get it on record, which kind of makes sense for why there was no big like singles push on any songs off that record. It was just like, here's the album. I guess we'll push N95 as a single, but not very strongly. But it is like, I had to get this out of my system, and now that it's out of my system, let's have some fun. Let's hey, we're dancing on Drake's grave, but even then, he's still very much like, you do have to take all the beef into context with this record, of course, but the album is very much not about that. It is like, it takes place in the aftermath, of course, of it all, but it is very much it's the sound of Kendrick falling in love again with hip hop in LA, in particular, like LA hip hop and what's going on there in the city right now, and you can feel that like jubilation. You can really hear it, and like Kendrick's having fun, so I'm having fun. And even the stuff on here that's a little more serious, it's a little more like Luther or Heart Part 6, even then, like, you're still having a good time with the record because, again, he remembered to make the songs good. And I think Kendrick in this mode is much more compelling as an artist, because I think beyond the thing with Mr. Morale, beyond anything else, beyond the fact that the songs are bad, beyond the fact that it's thorny and confrontational, beyond the fact that it has a song like Anti-Diaries exists, it just kind of showed that like Kendrick Lamar writing in that mode, or writing about his life in that aspect, just simply was not that compelling. It made me question, like, is Kendrick a compelling artist after all? And GNX reaffirms, hey, this guy is one of our most compelling artists alive today, and
I
I'm very
I
thankful for that.
I've cooled on it since release. I think it is merely pretty good, especially as someone who has, in recent years, especially tried to dabble with like the stuff coming out of LA, like Draco and Greedo and stuff like that. I do think like this is a slightly less compelling homogenization of like the current local sound, but it's still like very engaging, It's fun to hear him just like absolutely blast through his best talents in a way where like you want to hear the guy rip, but you want to hear him do it in a way where it's not like belaboring the point. And I think part of the problem with Mr. Morale is just like that is a record that is entirely built on belaboring the point, like you're
Mhm.
gonna get the abusive couple song and it's gonna be like 6 minutes long, and it's gonna be like extended sections of the song that just sound like people arguing instead of rapping. Like just like every decision made on that record, for better or worse, is fully leaned into, and it is very much a byproduct of people kind of putting on Kendrick this idea that he is like the one true rapper or whatever. It was very annoying, and this record decidedly moves away from that for better, I would say. Like, oh my God, thank you. We do not need to have an important album from this guy every time. I think we can merely settle for pretty good, and people seem to be okay with that. So,
Mhm. It like, I think we've discussed this before in the chat, but Mr. Morale, like, one of the things that this record really does is that, for better or worse, Mr. Morale kind of put the pressure off Kendrick to keep expecting classic records. Like, he dropped a dud. Like, he is fallible, he is human, and now, not every Kendrick record has to be this big, high stakes conceptual thing. It can just be, hey, here's a new Kendrick Lamar album, and that's what GNX is, and it's really stellar because of that. But that doesn't mean that, like, here's the thing: a low stakes Kendrick record is still like a mid to high stakes record for most other mainstream rappers. It's just like, oh, hey, he's just, it's like, it feels like him, that is much more like down to earth in a way that is, again, just, it's compelling, it's good. I don't give a shit if it's been memed to death. I love when he yells mustard. I think that's great. It's funny. again, just lots of good stuff on this record.
I
Lots of good
didn't know
moments.
he was ride or die for cats like that though, because like he keeps complaining about how they're not like Gus, you know, the theater cat from Cats. They not like
God
Gus.
damn
They
it.
not like Gus.
I will say, especially after
I hate you, Rose. God damn it, I fucking hate you.
especially after the SZA giant air quotes deluxe album, I really can't stress enough how much I appreciate the fact that Not Like Us is not on this album out of ethical hooping reasons. Like, it is just like what it's one of several things that makes the like victory lap aspect of this album work. He's like the lyric of like I'm way too important to ever let you slide on me again. It's like I'm simultaneously way too important to not like nuke you from outer space, but also like I'm not gonna keep harping on this forever and like put the diss track on my album because like I'm more important than dealing with Drake forever. And that's part of what I think is also special about it. It like closes the book.
Yeah, now Aiden Ross and XQC, those guys get to deal with Drake. Again, I could put him on my pay no mind list these days, and it's great. I think really that's one thing above just obviously not the record itself, but just like God damn it, the Beast had. Well, here's the thing: we don't know that for certain. Here's the thing: we will not know a definitive answer if the Beast has been slain until like probably 2 years from now. Like when we get 2 years from now and Drake hasn't had a hit record since then we can be like, all right, the Beast has been slain. Finally, the Drake demon in our lives, it's over. He's been exorcised. Society has moved on
I really
from
feel like
Drake.
we're really setting ourselves up for a somehow Palpatine has returned type
It's
type
gonna
situation.
here's the thing though. Again, that's
Listen,
why I'm
if
giving
there's
myself
anything
2
I've
years.
learned in 2024, if there's anything I've learned from this year, it's that bad people definitively go away once we tell them to. They do not come back at all in any way. Like they learn their lessons, they recuse themselves from their
They're
wrongdoing, and they
listening, they're
apologize.
learning.
Like I said, again, it would not. No, again, in 2 years, if Drake has a hit song, it's no surprise to me whatsoever. But again, God damn it, I hope. I just want some fucking hope, and this is the most hope I've had for Drake's career being over than right now. Signs are pointing to it. Okay, he's suing the record label. He's suing the streaming services.
Are you guys so excited to talk about Nice for What?
It's pretty tough stuff.
Oh God. Well, yeah, GNX, Kendrick Lamar, number 3 on the Omni list. Any extra thoughts? Or are we ready to
I think we're ready
keep it moving?
to move into the next section, and I would like to actually intro this next one if we can, because I have some
Go
things.
ahead.
So our next record, before Rose gets into Rose Corner here on the top 2 in a serious way, I have a little Christmas gift here, because I really thought that I would be playing the contrary voice. I thought that my father, John Misty, not only could I never like fully endorse, but that there would just be something that I couldn't quite put together. Like I've always found some of his songs moving and I found some of his stuff clever, but I could never really like thread the two together where I'm able to like have the cake and eat it too. And that's what my issue always was with pure comedy. But I guess time just makes fools of us all, to quote Mr. Fry Futurama, because this is the best Father John Misty record. It's not even just like a good Father John Misty record, but this is like I today listening to it truly was having a Frank Reynolds I get it moment. Like but also not because it's I have not changed my opinion of pure comedy. I went back to it and I was like, yep, okay, this actually is that much better at doing the thing it was trying to do then. I think this record is pretty damn great. I love that by starting with Mahash Mashana, it's like it starts with the closer, like what would be the closer in any like rational human being's album. And then it's like this entire album exists in like a secret like lost track at the end of an album that we like didn't get to hear, you know what I mean? It's like this album exists in an alternate universe after that, and because he starts the album that way, it did feel like he could just sort of make moves that he might not have been able to get away with otherwise. And I think this record is pretty astounding, and the first time I've simultaneously found him clever and affecting emotionally at the same time. Like, it was always either like, I find this clever but I'm at a distance to it, or like just dumb enough to try, where it's like I can really connect with this emotionally, but that's because he stripped away some of the I'm so clever stuff. And this is like the first time where it hasn't felt like this inherently like, aren't I so clever sort of thing. I think he's finally having his cake and eating it too, and I really like this thing. Spoiler alert.
I mean, the Father John Misty persona in 2024 is a very tricky thing to navigate around because, like, everybody is a little Father John Misty at this point. Like, in 2015, inventing this kind of guy felt revolutionary, and nowadays it's just like, who fucking cares if you're self-reflexive? Everybody's self-reflexive. We're all doing our own commentary behind our backs. It's really fucking stupid in a lot of ways to keep trying to engage with this project now, and yet Josh Tillman keeps turning up like interesting results. He talked about this one as being, a very intentional follow-up to Chloe in the Next 20th Century, a record that I think alienated everyone, including Josh himself, a little bit because he talked about wanting to take the Father John Misty out of the Father John Misty. And so you got a record that's just like full of these very arch, like pastiches of turn of the century music that I think, like they're well written. You can tell they're songs by him, but at the same time, you're like, this is the least I've ever cared about his music. Even if you like it, you're like, he can do more interesting stuff. And here he comes back to the question, he says, instead of removing myself from the music, instead of, quote, erasing myself from the music, I wanted to make a music about erasing myself. And I think this is a fucking astounding record at that. I think it very much is like getting down to the psychology he's always been trying to do of like, why do we as humans keep repeating these stupid fucking bourgeois mistakes of the 20th century? Like saying like, oh, we're going to be better. We're going to be better. But like just, fucking eating ourselves alive as a culture and tying it back to himself, in a way that like is actually interesting instead of just being like, oh, am I the bad guy?
Yeah.
Josh Tillman has always been a fucking interesting record in part songwriter in part because he is like, the classical like Dylan or Cohen type who's like always trying to be one step ahead of you. But at the same time, I feel like he acknowledges like, oh yeah, well, I'm a stupid fucking idiot too. So have fun with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in pretty much full agreement. I'm not sure if I'm as strong on this record as the rest of the pod folks, but that doesn't mean that I don't like this record a lot. I do like this record a lot. And I think the thing too is with this record, it is a lot of like, okay, it's the usual Father John Misty bag of tricks on some of these, but it's just elevated compared to some of the stuff he's done the last couple of years. And then some stuff here that like he's not made anything that sounds like this ever, and you would not think he'd be able to pull off a song that sounds like Screamland, for example. Like that sounds so unlike anything else in the Father John Misty canon. Like this like kind of epic song that feels distinctly not Father John Misty, but yet he's able to make it work and make it sound really fantastic.
Okay, not to besmirch one of our guys, one of our dearly beloved, it comes very close to Imagine Dragons-y in a way that could have gone so wrong. Like, it could have been an absolute faceplant, and he actually does pull off a kind of Imagine Dragons-y thing on that song with, like, the way that the big digital noise kick-in happens. Good, it's good, it works.
Oh yeah, shout out to BJ Burton. As always, producer of the last few Low records. Alan Sparhawk is playing guitar on this, so I think it's a very conscious nod in some degrees to that.
That makes sense. I think the weakest part of this record is Mental Health Screamland. I think there's like good ideas in both of those songs. I think Mental Health was the only time that my like old Father John Misty instincts almost kicked in, because I just think the actual chorus of like mental health, no one knows you like yourself. Like I get what you're doing, but you're grinding my gears a little still, just because I don't think the tune is good enough to justify it. But the rest of the record, like especially Mahash Mashana into She Cleans Up into Josh Tillman, is like was that 1 2 3 was like, whoa, wait, what's happening here? I like this. This is really great. But I think that those three, and then the last three of Being You, Time Makes Fools of Us All, and Summer's Gone, I think really, 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 really potent in terms of the emotions of them, and then like all of the bells and whistles of like the ideas he's cooking up and some of the sort of self-reflexive jokes and things like that. I will say, people have made the Lana Del Rey for boys thing before, but I think this is the first record where, like, in the same way that I didn't used to get Lana Del Rey, and I used to sort of find her thing a little contrived, and then over years and years and years of her just like keeping at it, eventually A, I became a woman, and B, like her shtick just sort of won me over. And in a similar sort of way, it's like he hasn't changed. He's the same guy, but for whatever reason in 2024, I am finally willing to accept into my life an album that starts with the lyrics, "His body is the Gelson's." I don't know, Rose, if you know this, but Gelson's is a LA grocery store, a very expensive one. And so there's a little bit of me that just is Leo pointing at that line, but it's also like that is the epitome of Father John Misty as male Lana Del Rey, like taking something that is inherently trivial and finding a way to make it poetic, but also make it funny that he's trying to make a poetic song about his body as the Gelson's. It's great. It's real. I really
and
love
her
it.
soul, it's the fallen star. I mean, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of Mahash Mashana, baby. Is this world is ordinary and cruel, but you can sure imagine something cosmic and beautiful if you try, and that's a Josh Tillman promise, baby.
Okay, so I have two very important pod jokes to hit here. One, if Brian Pumper had recorded Mahash Mashana, it would be about doing the bag dance. Do the bag dance instead of the corpse dance. You get it? Do the corpse dance, do the bag dance.
Won't have to do the bag dance with these arms. That's what I'm hearing.
And second of all, we really haven't been
go on with
this,
your second one, and then I'll introduce the final album.
We really haven't been hitting this drum enough this episode, so I just have to say that if they had released Summer's Gone by Father John Misty today, they'd have to call it Brat Summer's Gone. Anyways, that's it. That's all I have to say.
Wow, so true.
Brat Summer's gone.
Brat Summer is gone, but the good news is our number one record this year. It's a very distinctive, bright neon shade on that color. You know it all well. It's Bart. It's Bart. It's that yellow record about that funny yellow family that we all love. It's Bart.
God,
we didn't do Brat, but we did do Bart. We did.
Well,
Bart.
there is an album cover that does feature a very Bart-like shade as the primary color of its album cover, and that is our number one record of 2024. Which, again, there's a good segue. I had to take it. Do we have any extra thoughts on Mahash Mashana, or can we continue the segue?
We can continue on.
Let's continue the segue, folks. We're interrupting the segue. Back to the segue. Number one album of the year. Now, I will say, this was also a tie. There was also a tie between Mahash Mashana and our number one record, but in the way that I tallied the votes, I think this one had a number one on somebody's list, whereas Mahash Mashana was not number one on anybody's list. So that is what kind of eked out the win for this one. But still, a good number one. Number one, Jordy Greep, The New Sound. I will say a surprising number one. Not too surprising, but like surprising in that it's not that surprising. Like, of course, we were all very in on Black Midi when Schlagenheim came out, but it kind of felt like, okay, maybe we might be kind of done with this by the third record. But no, turns out we love the Greepster, we love the Greep, and Jordy Greep, New Sound is our number one album of the year. Rose, I know you're a very big proponent of this record, so I'm going to let you take it away.
Oh, baby. It's time to talk about just not my favorite record of the year. Like this would probably be like my second or third if you had to like put it up to me. Like the only ones I'd put higher are probably like Small, Medium, Large, Raphael, Terrell, Spectral Evolution, and Maurice, Lacuna, and Parlor. Shouts to all those albums and the many others I will not get to talk about because ranked voting lists, that's just how it goes, folks. Yeah, this one. I've always loved Jordy Greep's whole shtick from day one. I thought having a funny little man who sounds like that and makes music that sounds like that is, inherently just a very good concept. But him fully stepping out onto his own, I was intrigued. And then hearing that the songs all sounded like really fucked up variations on Donald Fagen's circa the Nightfly era tunes, like it was just a slam dunk from day one. There was no way I was going back, and this thing is a real monument to overdoing it, for better or worse. Like this entire record feels very specifically designed to meet all of people's expectations about Jordy Greep and piss them off thoroughly, and I love it for that. I really love it for that. It's 11 tracks. It's over an hour. It contains two songs over like 10. It contains a like 15-minute song on the vinyl cut. It is way too long. It ends with a Frank Sinatra cover. It features a song on this Jordy Greep solo album that is not even sung by Jordy Greep, like somebody else is doing the fucking vocals. It has multiple interludes of like little skits that you don't need. It's just, again, it's a monument to rock and roll excess, and I think it's very intentional. It is a record that kind of leans into the, Steely Dan mindset that has increasingly been permeating music in 2024, where we recognize that there is this wave of like bizarre, disaffected human beings, primarily men, who just do not make sense. They are coming into ideologically incoherent lifestyles, and they're just fascinating to look at. You want to listen to music about deep unpleasantness in 2024. I think you have to kind of justify it by making interesting things, and Jordy Greep's line here finally rides like the perfect zones between like his traditional, like obsessive world, quote unquote, world music and prog, and like all the typical things he's always been very archly obsessed with, but coherent into a way where it's like, oh, I do not feel like I'm getting the compromise of like we have to do a 3-minute song, because that's the Black Committee thing of like trying to compact this into, something coherent and simple to understand. Like I feel like that was always their biggest holdback, was just the feeling that like at times they were making concessions, and this album again does not make concessions.
No. Yeah, so that's the thing is, I think obviously I love the first Black Midi record, Schlagenheim, a record that I think was, I put it pretty quickly in my top 25 of the decade of the 2010s. It would probably be higher now. And it has felt like every subsequent Black Midi record after that has, I do agree, it feels like concessions are made, compromises that I think just didn't benefit anybody in that band overall. And I do think the new sound is like, oh, okay. Like, especially like for this to be the first thing we've heard from him post like Hellfire, it's like, oh, okay, we actually get to hear, we get to hear Jordy Greep unfiltered, uncensored, completely unleashed. I like that every song here is explicit. I think that's funny. That's just it's a filthy record. Like,
the alternate title of this record would be "Can I Be Explicit in Nature?" I think that would be a good title for this record.
Yes. Jesus Christ. I said this in my low for review, but I'll still say it again for the record for those who do not watch that series of mine, which understandable. The way that Jordy Greep talks about women and the relationships with them on this record is just it's so disgusting. Like, it's so disgusting, but that is a big positive of this record, is that, like, especially obviously we talked about Holy Holy was our song of the year, so we're actually, it is funny that I think it's the first time in a long time where we've had same artist for both song of the year and album of the year. That usually does not line up, but like the way that the way that women are talked about on this record is completely abhorrent, but that is the point. That is absolutely the point, and that is, as Rose, as you were saying, like, the deep unpleasantries of masculinity and being a man in this year, like they have to be examined. And I think Jordy has such a specific way of doing that I think is really illuminating. Like I think one of the only other people that I can think of uh that is able to dial into the mindset of a man in 2024 and bring out the absurdities in such a succinct way is like Connor O'Malley. Like this feels like, oh, if Connor O'Malley was British and 5'4", he would be making music that sounds like this. And that's a real positive.
What if you locked Connor
it's
O'Malley in a room and gave him a bunch of like Steely Dan and Can records for like years? He would come out and he would make like this album.
Absolutely. Which now just makes me want a Connor O'Malley Jordy Griep collab, and I we're never gonna get that. And it makes me
I could see him
very,
directing a
very
video
sad.
for Jordy Griep.
That's
like,
true.
Like that would make sense.
That's true. But yeah, this is I will say even then I this record's it's a nice surprise because again I did not care for Hellfire. I thought Hellfire was just like, all right, we've taken this too far. So when the breakup news got announced, I was not too sad. I was like, yeah, they had a solid run, but they kind of a fire that could not be sustained. So hearing this is like a nice relief. It's like, oh hey, like it's like, okay, the issue was not Jordy Griep on Hellfire. The issue was just all three of those guys having to compromise and do all this stuff that like just was not healthy for them as creatives. And so that makes me very excited to hear what Cameron is up to whenever he releases his proper like solo record. But yeah, this is an excellent record. Let's talk about some specific cuts. Blues, I love that Blues became a TikTok meme. I think it's very funny and cool. And I appreciate it. Again, America was getting grieped all fall long. But yeah, Blues. You mentioned the track that does not have Griep on vocals, that is Seth Evans, because originally this record was not going to be a Geordie Soul record. It was going to be a collab record between him and Seth Evans. But Griep was just on such a frantic pace when it came to writing songs that it just ended up becoming his solo record. Aside from that one song, like, well, I'll give you this one, and I do like Motorbike for the record. I think it's a nice like.
Oh yeah, no, it's one of my favorite
of
tunes here. To be clear.
Yeah, I think it's a welcome reprieve from like the insanity of the first 7 tracks. Like it's a nice like, okay, here's some breathing room. We'll break from Griep, and then we can move back into the most insane run on the record, which is As If Waltz, The Magician, If You Are But a Dream, where it's like, okay, you get insane proggy Griep. Like The Magician, I think was originally going to be a Black Midi song. Like they were playing it on like their last tour dates,
Yep.
but obviously Griep has repurposed that for his own solo stuff, and then ending it with a Frank Sinatra cover. I mean, his mind is an incredible
he truly
palace.
has like one of the most original brains I've seen of a current songwriter, and that's I think this record really displays it in like the absolute audacity of like opening this record up and closing it the way they do. Like those first 3 and last 3 songs are perhaps like the biggest range of ideas he has, where I can just feel him going like, well, yes, I'm gonna do it this way, and it's like, oh, why would you do it that way? That's so fucking stupid. Like, Tara has quickly become one of my favorite songs here because it sounds like something
Rose, I'm
that
sorry.
would belong in like the.
Rose, you literally just did the "don't do it that way, you'll never make a dime" thing. You literally almost word for word.
I mean,
I told
really,
them, don't do it that way, you'll never make a dime.
Jordy Griep's entire
true.
career does kind of feel like a demonstration of like the guys James Murphy was losing his edge to. It's like kids who go to Amoeba to do an episode of What's in My Bag, and then they're just picking movies instead of records. Like, what the fuck? You weren't supposed to do that.
I forgot to say this in the last segment.
For.
She, not even just to be snotty, She Cleans Up is the true society has progressed past the need for James Murphy. Like the fact that Father John Misty can rock out like that and do what is essentially like his North American scub and have it be that good in 2024 is like, we have room for enough white guys who think they're that clever. Like Father John Misty can take James Murphy's spot on the raft and we can leave James Murphy behind now.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, I think part of James Murphy's ability was like again, like I talked about self-reflexiveness earlier. Like we have certainly gotten past a certain level of overexposure with that kind of songwriting, and I think there are very few guys who can make it interesting these days. Jordy is another one of them. Like he is, the very first song on this record is investigating the kind of like, instead of going for the other kinds of guys he's talking about on this record, like war criminals, horrible, deluded freaks who have told themselves as many lies as possible. It's just like annoying teenagers is his subject on the start of just like again, every single one liner on this record makes me like cackle and scream with delight. Like you put your left hand in your jacket and pretend you have a gun. You put your hand in your jacket and pretend you're Napoleon. You imagine a roving camera capturing your melancholy. It's just like every single line is so singularly dedicated to like destroying his subjects that it's like, yeah, I could listen to him talk about this for a while. I could listen to him inhabit this like fucking a bot or through a war. Disrespect is to overthrow the man who gave you everything. Uh, fucking ungratefulness is to is to tear down the city he built. Just like shit like that, where I'm just like, he's working with advanced brain waves here. He is deconstructing and building in ways that I need other songwriters to get on the level with. Like if you're gonna go all out, do it all out for real. Don't give me any less than this in 2025, please.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said anything there any better. Jackie, any lingering thoughts on this record?
I have two things. One, I don't love this record. I kind of do feel a little bit of it's too long, too much, even though I do like deeply admire it. Two things, just real quick. One, I love Bongo Season, and particularly the outro of Bongo Season. It's like, what if David Byrne could make like a joke on purpose instead of a joke on accident? Like it has this kind of like the way he's just like Bongo Season. It's sweeping the globe. It's truly sweeping the globe. And then my other thing I wanted to say, and this is just fully in the just repeating jokes that I've made on other platforms from the Discord, but I like to imagine, hey Jordy, this is your cousin Marvin. Marvin Greep. You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this. And he's just holding a phone up to like an incel. That's the bit.
I mean, really, truly, this is the do not expect too much from the end of the world of records. If I'm going to get really nerdy about it, it's too long. It's really depressing and archly European. Yeah, just go watch that movie or listen to this record. You'll get kind of the same effect.
Yeah. Again, good record. Our number one for the year of 2024. But of course, the year is almost over. By the time we record this, of course, by the time this episode is out, I think it'll probably be the last day of the year, or I think it's either the 30th or 31st, whatever the Tuesday is for public listeners, and then obviously Patreon on the Sunday. 2025, as I mentioned in the middle of the episode, we got a lot of stuff cooking. There's a lot of ovens firing, but I can at least explain what we have going on in January. Of course, we're starting out the month with our last best new pod episode for a little bit with Jackie's shoulda beens. Very, very excited to talk some of these songs with Jackie. Long, we on this podcast, we just never let Jackie speak her opinions or anything like that. So, glad that we're finally giving her an opportunity. But yeah, that'll be our first episode of the year. But otherwise, for the rest of January, what we have cooking is, of course, finally we're going back into Twilight. We were supposed to do this episode before we started Best New Pod, but then things got pushed, and we are getting into the Twilight Saga Eclipse soundtrack with Brit. Very excited to dive back into the world of Twilight. We're going to talk about Perry because Perry did a song in the first movie, so we love talking Perry, even though I don't think he's going to be on that playlist at all. But Twilight Saga Eclipse, and then White Boy Heaters, Volume 2. We're cooking. We're getting into it. I'm very, very excited to do that episode. Again, I had a lot of fun doing the first one, and I think I got some heaters up deck for that. And then on top of that, we also have the Reality Stars episode. We have I think that's going to be, actually, yeah, that's probably going to get moved to January, talking about music made by reality TV show people. And that one is a bit of a hot ticket. I think our guest for that has asked me multiple times, like, hey, is that still on the docket? So again, there's some anticipation, but for real, folks, we have a lot of episodes planned for next year. I think this is probably the first time in our history where we've had basically our entire slate for the year like figured out. So we're cooking with gas on in the Indieheads podcast in 2025.
Rose, real quickly, I'm trying to think, what is going to be our blank check always saying they're about to do Penny Marshall bit? Like, what's the series that we should
Best
promise
New Pod
every
season
episode?
3 will be coming in 2025.
Yes, exactly.
If I keep lying and telling people that, it'll be really good. It'll just be like last time, where Best New Pod season 2 will be coming soon. Okay, it will not take another year and a half like last time. It totally
that was
will
more
not.
2 years. That was 2 years. We will not. I can promise you this, listeners. We will not take 2 years. That is 2 exact years. All right, that's 365 plus 365. It will not be that long until season 2 of Best New Pod.
Please never let me move to New Jersey again.
But yeah, we have a lot of stuff planned for the year. If you're in the Discord, you already know that we have a series idea that is turned into not an idea, but like, oh, it's gonna happen. So I'm very afraid to start that in the next year, but also I will say I did just put this on the schedule, Jackie, because I realized we had a nice little we had a break, and we can kind of do it. This is a much compared to when we've done this series in the past, where it's like it's an every week thing. We could probably slice this up into nice little, like, hey, do this regular episode, this, so on and so forth. Discog Breakdown will be back.
We got lots of good stuff. That's right, everyone. In 2025, we will be doing. I was trying to think what was the funniest band to pretend that we. What's the fucking
We're talking about we're finally talking about the Shags, okay? Like, people have been like clamoring up outside my house. Like, there are little crowds screaming outside right now. I'm about to go on my fire escape and address them like Shah Rukh Khan does every morning. It's gonna be really cool.
I was totally blanking for some reason, but we will be doing the Tune Yards Discog Breakdown in 2025.
Yes!
That's a promise.
Oh my god. But that is Tune Yards Discog Breakdown coming in the fall of 2025. But no, we're gonna save what the actual we're gonna wait till we get a little closer to the fall to reveal what the next Discog Breakdown series is gonna be. But yeah, in short, let's just, obviously we have a shit ton of numbered episodes. We had literally in the time we did Best New Pod, just so many ideas were stacking up. And then Pod Hero Season 2, that will be coming in 2025. I will say a new number 1 series will be coming in 2025. Obviously, if you're in the Discord, you already know what it is. Listeners, we're gonna, here's the thing. If you want to know what the fuck is going on with the Indieheads podcast, you want to get the inside scoop. $1 a month gets you that inside scoop, get you in the Discord, get you episodes 48 hours early. You get the scoop before anybody else, because the new number 1 series is one of the dumbest ideas that we are ever going to do on this podcast, and I'm so fucking excited to do it, because it's just it's in a way it's a culmination of a number of bits that we have been doing over the years. So very excited to get that rolling. And then Best New Pod season 3 will be coming in less than 2 years. Okay,
how about
less
this?
than 2 years.
Best New Pod Season 3 will be coming at the same time as Sky Ferreira's Mass Seduction. So maybe next year, or maybe never.
Mass Seduction? Oh boy, I'm really excited to hear another version of that record. We don't have enough.
Actually called? Or what is it? What is the fucking...
Sky Ferreira
Masochism.
Here's the thing, it's been
Masochism. Sorry. I was off.
It's been so long.
I
has
we
been
don't
so
have
long.
enough versions of Mass Seduction. No, like we only have like 3 or 4. We probably need more.
Yeah.
And we will be talking about Mass Seduction on that series since we have to talk about the famous song from that
Well,
record.
Rose, we're
God
saving that for Mass Seduction albums breakdown, where we do an entire podcast, each one episode on one song from Mass Seduction by St. Vincent, obviously.
And we will be covering each version of Mass Seduction in full. So
Oh,
that
of
includes the
course, of
Nita
course.
Kravitz mix that I know we all remember.
God. All right. We got to move. All right. Let's wrap it up.
Please
The
kill
longer
me,
this
by the way.
episode goes on,
Please
we're going to
kill
come
me.
up with worse ideas. We need to end
Yeah,
the episode now.
So again, this is our last episode of 2024. So I said it during our by the way, 10 years of the Indieheads podcast. What the fuck? That's crazy that we've been doing this podcast for that long. That's insane. And again, the reason we're doing it is because of you, the listeners. So thank you all for supporting us for what I thought was a really great year for the Indieheads podcast. And I think we have a better year on deck next year. And that's not to say that we had a bad year this year. Absolutely not. But again, I think there's just within the podcast sphere, within everybody that's on the podcast, there's just such a stew of creativity that's going on right now between all of us that I'm very, very excited for what we have in store for y'all in 2025. So I hope you keep tuning in next year, folks, as we will see you in the new year with a Best New Pod bonus episode for our $5 a month or more patrons. Otherwise, you'll see us in 2 weeks as we get into the Twilight Saga Eclipse soundtrack. So we'll see you listeners very, very soon. Bye-bye.
But a dream, I hope I never waken. It's more than I could bear to find that I am forsaken. If you're a fantasy, then I'm content to be in love with livelihood and pray my dream comes true. I long to kiss you, but would not dare. I'm so afraid that you may vanish in the air. So darling, if our romance should break up, I know I never wake up if you but a dream. I long to kiss you, but would not dare. I'm so afraid that you may vanish in the air. So darling, if our romance should break up,